What's up, everybody? So, I was asked to share about my experience with quitting weed because I know that some of you guys are going through this. And so, I wanted to make a quick video. I think I'm going to continue on explaining more about it in some future videos to come. But I just wanted to share a little bit about it because I know that some of you are struggling with this. And I'm gonna call this video "Quitting Weed versus Quitting Kratom," so we can make it relevant to what our focus is on this channel, and it can be hopefully helpful to some of you guys that are going through this. So my experience with weed is pretty extensive. I grew up in the hippie scene, in the Grateful Dead scene in the 90s and the early 2000s, and I was constantly surrounded by weed. And even before that, even before I started that life of traveling around the country and following these bands, from a young age in high school, I was really drawn to the whole culture of like stoners and stuff. And so it was around my freshman year of high school was the first time that I ever smoked weed. And I used it when I was a teenager to kind of just like escape mentally from the family problems that I had going on in my life. And so it started off like that, and then when I left home and I started traveling and I was immersed in this hippie culture, it was just such a part of life. I didn't use it as much during that time because when I was traveling, it was this constant hustle at these concerts to be able to earn enough money to stay on the road and pay for what I needed to pay for. So I really didn't have the opportunity to be stoned. But what it became then was it became this like this commodity for me, and it started my work with weed. So I lived in Northern California for a while when I was younger in Humboldt County, which is like, I mean, there's a lot of weed areas of the country now, but Humboldt County has always been known for the weed that they grow and that they have there. And California was the first state to go medical. And so I was living out there when all of that was going on. And I lived on a farm, on a weed farm, and I worked on that farm and worked on other people's farms. So I'm giving you a little background of where I come from and how extensive my involvement with weed was, just so that you understand. As I got older, I started using it a lot more. The older that I got and the more stress that I was under, it helped me to deal with that, and also with the chronic pain condition that I had. So, and then I worked with it again as I got older for a long time too. So at the point when I quit weed, had been using it every day, all day, and working with it for 15 years straight. I literally was stoned for 15 years straight. When I was in my kratom addiction, I was on it for 3 years, and I was smoking weed heavily throughout it the whole time. So I'm just giving you a little background. For me, as we get into the differences between quitting weed and quitting kratom, I'll start off by saying that quitting kratom was a way more physical process for me. I had extreme physical withdrawals and mental withdrawals too. There was a mental aspect as well, but the physical aspect was all encompassing. I quit kratom in February of 2020, and I quit THC in July of 2020, and then I stayed on just CBD until September of 2020. So I was on weed for February, March, April, May, June, July, 5 months after I quit kratom. So that gave me the chance for my body to regulate from the kratom addiction and the quit and the first parts of the recovery. And I also quit coffee as well. I quit coffee 3 months after I quit kratom. So I got off the coffee too, and then it came time for quitting weed. So here's how I did it. I quit it by tapering off, just like I did with kratom. Like I said, I was on THC for 5 months after quitting kratom, and then I went to CBD. And what I did, because I was a bong rip girl, I would take bong rips throughout pretty much the whole day, every maybe couple hours or so. And so I really had to break that habit of, first of all, the bong rips, but also the amount of times that I was smoking during the day. So I switched to a one hitter, which cut down on not only the amount that I was using, but it was breaking that habit of the bong. And so I started just using one hitters, and I would, just like in my kratom taper, I would allow myself one hitter every 4 hours. And this is how I started. And so I stayed on this amount for probably 2 months or so. And then I started stretching out the time in between those one hitters. So I was at the end only smoking one hitter every 6 hours. So I was able to go throughout the whole day with only those 2 one hitters. Then I switched to vaping, and to wean off of the smoking aspect of it. And I replaced one of those one hitters with hitting a vape cartridge one time. So I then did that for probably a month or so. And then I switched to all CBD vaping. And so those 2 times that I was puffing, I replaced with CBD. So it would be when I would wake up and then 6 hours later. And so I stayed on the CBD for 2 months, and then I quit that. I had something really awesome happen, and I haven't shared this with my kratom story as well that I'll share here, but first explaining about the weed. The last time that I consumed THC, I had been using these vape cartridges in my taper process that worked really well with my chemistry, and whatever strain it was, it helped me to feel calm. It helped me to feel like a little happy for a second, and I wasn't able to get those cartridges anymore. So I got another type of cartridge, and I forget because it's been so long now what strain it was. But dude, this stuff made me bug out. Like, I had the craziest panic attack that I think probably, no, I've had some other crazy panic attacks, but this one was crazy. Like, I had this full-on meltdown because I had a lot of health issues during my my kratom addiction, and I had this full meltdown based on like fears about my health, because I was convinced at different points that I had some sort of terminal illness or that I was like literally dying. And my husband was home with me, bless his freaking heart, man. He's such a good guy. And he just sat with me, and I literally, like, I was freaking out so hard that, like, I live in a condo building where, like, our walls are pretty thick, but I was just like bugging that anybody was gonna hear me. And I like turned on the fan on my oven, like the overhead, that like exhaust fan, and like I like pulled this box fan out of my closet because I wanted to like muffle the sounds of like me just basically losing it. And I wasn't like crying or anything, but I was just like, oh my gosh, like, my like basically just trying to come up with a game plan of how I was gonna like handle like my imminent like my health problems, and like I was gonna die. That's what I thought. And so I came out of that space, thank God, and I realized like, okay, that was from the vape cart. That was from whatever that strain was. And it was so awesome that happened, because it gave me such a negative experience that it created this like lasting memory that's like, I now have this permanent aversion to weed because that was such bad experience. And now to share with you what happened in my kratom experience, quitting experience that I've never shared before. And these are all like 100% blessings from God that this happened. That my normal kratom source, they didn't have the strain that I always used. And so I got this other strain, and the same sort of thing where it just made me feel so anxious and so weird. And that's why I was at 1 gram doses every 4 hours when I quit kratom. And that's honestly the reason why I quit when I did. If I had this other strain of kratom, I guarantee you I would have been milking that down to probably like, I don't even know, 1/4 gram. But because this other kratom that I got, and the one that I always use, they didn't have anymore, it made me feel so bad that I was just like, whatever, screw it, I'm jumping. And so that also happened with kratom, and that was totally God that was doing that. So, and I understand for you it may not be that way. But so to answer your question, the person that wanted me to make this video, weed was a lot more mental for me. So I told you how I tapered down. When I finally jumped off the CBD, keep in mind, I had been stoned for 15 years, you guys. So basically, I had to relearn how to do everything, because I had used weed for everything. I had used weed. First thing that I would do when I would wake up in the morning is I would take a bong rip and I would drink a cup of coffee. And when I was on kratom, I would take kratom. And so I had to relearn how to do everything, the wiring of my brain, because I had used weed and then coffee and kratom as well for like, in like the pleasure center of my brain, where I would like, anything I had to do that I didn't want to do, it was just like these little like, these little rewards that I would give myself. And that's what weed was. Where like, waking up, because I'll go into some of the stuff that I dealt with over the years, maybe at some point down the line when I share my testimony. But I went through some really hard times in my life, you guys. And so even waking up was really difficult. And what weed became was a way of giving myself this like little reward for like waking up. And it would also just like, being high would just kind of like, smooth the edges of like what I was going through. And so that all had to be relearned. I had to relearn how to do anything. I would smoke a bowl before I would do the dishes. I would smoke a bowl for going to work. I worked with weed for a long time, like I said. So like I was smoking weed the whole time, And so I had to relearn literally how to do everything. And so it was a very mentally challenging process to get off of weed. Dude, my whole perception of time when I was high was completely different. Time just flew by. Like, the way that I perceive time, like, yeah, sometimes you get super, stony baloney and you end up like being in this space where it feels like time has stopped. That didn't happen to me for a long time because I was such a seasoned smoker. But like, time just changes. Your whole perception of time changes. And getting off of weed, it felt like time went so slow. that happened with kratom a lot too, to relate the two things. But dude, I remember like being like, oh my gosh, like, and I was so used to just waiting those 4 or 6 hours to like get to my next like time that I could have that one hitter or whatever. And so my whole perception of time changed, and I had to like recalibrate to like real time. And physically though, I only went through like where I couldn't eat for like a week. I couldn't sleep for maybe a couple weeks. So those are the physical withdrawals that I went through. And because I had just gone through kicking coffee and kratom, the weed stuff paled in comparison, even though I was on it for 15 years. So I know the person that asked me to do this, they said that they were able to kick kratom fairly easily and that they're really struggling with weed. So I wanted to share my experience, and I wanted to share how I tapered off. And then, what the biggest thing that helped me that I share with kratom and that I'm going to share with you too is that complete abstinence is 100% crucial. I tried quitting weed before, and I made it 7 months, and I thought that I could smoke one bowl at night, and it wasn't like that for me. When you change your neurochemistry by giving yourself a little taste of it, you're going to keep wanting it. So being completely abstinent is very important. So when you quit, quitting and then not touching it again. I got COVID twice, unfortunately, and one of the times because I don't take Tylenol or anything like that, I used CBD, and I felt horribly guilty about it. I felt so terrible because the way that I look at it is that it's still weed. I don't care if it doesn't have THC in it. It's still the plant, and I'm still putting it in my body. And I felt horribly guilty about it, but I wasn't going to take a Tylenol. So I used CBD when I had COVID the first time. The second time I didn't when I had it. So other than that, I have been completely abstinent from it. And I'm to the point now where like, I honestly, like, I gotta be straight up. I hate weed. I hate what I lost to it. I hate the years that I lost to it. I hate how it stole my potential. I hate how it was very deceptive in the sense that I thought that it was like, this medicinal thing. And we live in a world now and in a time now where it's permeating our culture, and it's becoming more accepted in the mainstream. My state of Illinois legalized a couple years ago. Cali's been legalized for so long. Michigan's been legalized for so long. Colorado, obviously. So there's so many places that are legalizing, and it's becoming so much more accepted in the mainstream. And I do understand that we're all adults and that we all have the choice to consume what we consume, especially if it's legal. But I feel like it's really unfortunate that it's becoming so accepted, and that also there is not a lot of harm reduction around it. Because here's the deal, guys, is that the weed that is out there now is not the way that the weed was 20 years ago. The strength and the potency of weed is crazy. And you have to be real about that. THC is psychoactive, okay? And for somebody like me, when I don't have weed in my system, I am even keel. I am totally cool. Yeah, I get sad about things. Yeah, I get upset about things, but that's normal. But I am even keel. And with weed, it's a psychoactive substance. And like, not only do you have the highs and the lows of actually being high on it and coming down off of it, but it creates a lot of imbalance in brain chemistry because of the psychoactive element of THC. And so if there are any underlying mental illness stuff, or there's a history of mental illness in your family, it can really cause a lot of damage. And not only that, like, weed robs your potential. Like, I have accomplished so much in these almost 3 years of being off of it. Than the 15 years that I was on it, and it dampens your potential as a person. For me, it got in the way of how I would relate to people and how I would communicate. And so it just like created this distance between me and the world. And not only was I working with it and I couldn't talk about it a lot of times, and there's a lot of times a lot of isolation when you're in the cannabis industry, because you're working with your crew, but you're not working with the rest of the world. So like the mental aspect of just being baked and not being able to like relate with people on a normal level, mixed with that aspect of what I was doing professionally, really isolated me. It really exasperated like a lot of like what's the right word, where I thought everybody was out to get me. I got like really super into conspiracy theories. Kratom was like it made it way worse. So the kratom and the weed together, I was just like hyper fixating on like all the evil in the world and conspiracy theories and all this garbage. So like those were some things that really affected me. And when I came off of weed and I got through the adjustment process, because you're going to need to go through an adjustment process with it, not only physically as your body regulates to not having it, but also mentally, like I said. But now I'm able to like be a part of the world and relate to people. And I see people who are on weed, like in that sort of way. I work with a couple people that are heavy in like potheads, and like going out every 2 to 3 hours to puff, and I just see like it from the outside in. It's such an interesting like, I don't know, like way to like gain insight on my own situation. And yeah, they're different people, and they're, they have different things going on in their lives, but it's still, I see things about them that remind me of myself, and I see them not being their best and not reaching their full potential and getting confused about different things, and getting like, one of them gets like very like not erratic, they get like very irritable is the word that I'm looking for. Very irritable. And that's one of the things too that happened to me with weed and with kratom, was that when I would start to like come down off of either of those, I was super irritable. And so I see this dude that I work with getting like snappy and stuff, and he can't help it. And I see like it differently now. So it's interesting to see it, but mostly I see them not living up to their full potential. And so that'll be the final thought about this, that like, being on weed, yeah, it's not as bad as kratom, but like you're not able to be the best person that you can be, and you're not able to live up to your full potential when it's on that level of, addiction like what I was in. I understand that it's legal. I understand that it's your choice to do it. One last thing before I go though, is that the spiritual aspect of it is real. Like it will come between you and God. So, yeah, but it's everybody's choice to use it, just like it's everybody's choice if they want to have a drink or not. So this was just kind of like a free form, sharing what my experience was, how I got off of weed and what helped and what it's been like afterwards. For those of you that were wondering about this, if you have any questions in particular, please feel free to share them in the comments section or hit me up directly. And all right, I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.